Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zoho Zone podcast, where we talk with Zoho partners about their Zoho implementation. I'm Andrew Simpson with Ether Automation, and today on the podcast, I have Massimo from Bluroot. Massimo, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. We were just discussing how to say my last name, so I'll say it for Andrew. Just in case anyone cares, it's Ianniruberto. So no one will remember it, no one will know how to spell it, but yeah, I'm happy to be here. Excited.
Yeah, I don't know any. There's no other Massimos in the Zoho ecosystem that I know of, right?
Yeah, we should be good. Yeah.
Yeah, only one Massimo. Cool. So can you tell me? Let's start by telling me a bit about your background, how you became a Zoho partner, what brought you into the space, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So a little bit of a funny story. I started working with CRMs in 2013. I was still in university. I graduated in 2014, but I started working with some CRMs back then. It was actually Salesforce and Dynamics at the time. In 2014, I graduated, and at that time, I had a few clients that I had scrounged up that summer that needed CRM work. So it was just a demand thing. There were people that were talking through friends and family needing a CRM, mostly in the real estate and mortgage world, which we'll probably talk about a bit today. And so, I got started. Funny enough, I was a pretty young guy at the time. I did about a year not being a Zoho partner, just setting up Zoho. Then I went to Ian. Probably all of you know him. He's been around at Zoho forever. And I kind of said, can I become a partner? He made me do this test. Funny enough, he asked for 5 examples of implementations I've done, and I had only done 2. So I made up 3 of them, and I got in and became a partner. And it's much harder, I believe, now to become a partner. I guess I got in at a good time, but yeah, that's how it started. So just about from when I incorporated the business or whatever, 10 years actually, because we're in 2024 now. So yeah, 10 years ago it started. Based off of some demand. And I've always been a tinkerer. As a kid, I would, funny enough, hack PSPs, for those that remember that. Well, yeah, everyone listening to this is, yeah. So I say hack, but I would take them apart and solder the motherboard so that people could actually download hacked games or free games. And so I had a little business out of that. So I was always a tinkerer. I liked playing with things, seeing how they work. And so setting up CRMs kind of went in line with that. Yeah.
Interesting. It's funny that you mentioned at the time the tier, like the ability to get into the Zoho partner network was much easier. Off the camera, off recording, I'll tell you our experience. We had a very different experience. It was much more difficult to become a Zoho partner, right?
As it should be, honestly.
Yeah, we got it handed we got our ass handed to us a few times with trying to become a partner. It was a really interesting story.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you off camera something weird. But
okay.
Anyways, so at this point though, you're not doing your traditional Zoho implementation like when you started. You were doing custom setups, that kind of thing. But you're not doing that anymore. Why the transition? Why did you decide to move? How did you make that choice?
Yeah. Okay. No, great question. So the way we kind of pitch it or talk about it, and this was actually true, is for the first 4 or 5 years, we were, like most partners, setting up Zoho for anyone that needed it. We are based in Canada, like Andrew, and so we actually mostly did work up here, although we did some in the States. And what we started noticing, and I say we now, I have a business partner now. You guys may know him. His name's Tom. At the time, it was just myself with some staff. But long story short, what I started noticing at the time was a lot of mortgage brokers, so loan officers, if you're an American, were coming to us saying, hey, could you build this for me? Could you build it? And it was almost always the same, roughly 80%. And so actually in 2016, I kind of hacked together something in the Zoho vertical, CRM vertical, which I guess we'll talk about a bit. But it never took off. I basically made a version, that 80% in the vertical, and thought one day I'm going to sell this like a product. But for those of you that know me, no, I'm not the best executor. I have ideas and I'll start something, but I don't often finish it. It's a weakness of mine. And so I actually knew a gentleman. I went to school with him, Tom, who's now a business partner. He saw some interest in this, and he is an engineer by trade. or by education. And so he's very different than me. He is an executor. And long story short, we started moving down that path of becoming a product company. So for 4 years, we built tools for everyone, but we saw a pattern. Tom joined forces with myself. Then what we did is we actually made a product on top of Zoho, or a vertical. And we've been doing that for 5 years now. For the first 2-3 years, it was a bit of a journey. We had to, as a lot of you partners are, you're probably bootstrapped or self-funded. You didn't go raise money or whatever. And so we were taking the profits from the service and putting it into the product, because as you can probably imagine, if a product's selling for $100 a month, you need a lot of users to pay the bills. And so for 2.5 years, the product was unprofitable. But now we're at the point, 5 years into the product, where just a year ago, we turned off all custom work. So we no longer do any custom setup, any custom customization, workflows, integrations. That's actually how we met Andrew in many ways. But yeah, so now we're fully product, and depending on the month, we average around 40 to 50 new users a month coming on board. And we have now shifted where we've got like MRR, and we track our churn, and we do marketing and sales and support. We no longer do custom stuff. So it's a very interesting journey. I don't think there's a lot of, at least Zoho partners, who have done that. There's definitely Salesforce ones who have done it, and some have like publicly traded and sold and all that stuff. But yeah, that's kind of the Cole's notes on the journey. I don't know if there's anything specific there you want to know.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting, right? Like, I can imagine that transition is incredibly painful, right? Like, you have a bunch of systems and training and processes and cash coming in from this one part of the business, the services part, right? And all of that needs to go towards the product side of things. The additional cash goes towards product. We need new training, new systems just for the product side of things. Looking at this, how did you restructure your team for that transition, right? Because you had employees at the time, right? Like, how do you move them from, hey, you're a consultant, to, hey, you focus on new products? I don't know, something there, right? Like, how does that transition happen?
Yeah, so at a high level, the whole journey, that process was not fun. I won't sugarcoat it. During the transition, or during the time when we saw the product, like service used to be 80% of the revenue, and then we saw product coming up, right? And so when we started seeing that, there was a lot of internal, and everyone should be ready for this if they do this, where people are wearing multiple hats and they may not even want to. There's resourcing problems. There were internal squabbles with, or squamishes or whatever, with myself and Tom and other staff, like just where to put your focus, right? At the end of the day, we made a decision saying the company is going to become product focused. And so what we did with the staff that were on the service side is we tried to move, and we're not a massive team. We're at 12 staff now. We were actually bigger with the service side. But where I'm going with this is we meshed. So first off, we set a year in advance to the whole team that we're going this direction. That they all knew about the product coming up, but it was never a definitive, like, we are only going to become product till a year out. And we thought that as management, but then we told the team, listen, we're going to shift fully now. We're ready. We gave options to all of the team members that were on the service side of where we think they could fit on the product side. And so where most of them fit was in customer success / account management, honestly. One of them went into development. And so we gave them the choice, and we kind of said, this is where we think you'll fit. And it was about a year transition. Now, I won't sugarcoat it as well. 3 people didn't make it through the transition, or however you want to say it. And it wasn't necessarily from day one we said that. It's like, let's try to move you. Some opted, you know what, I wanted to be service and we're not anymore. I'm moving on. Some got asked to leave because they couldn't fit. But so it did get a little messy, I guess. But we tried to minimize that, and a lot of the core team is still intact. And now we've come through the other side. But we also kept a lot of cash reserves. I was kind of lucky. Same with my business partner Tom. Like I'm 31 now. Tom's 30. We were doing this in our 20s, no kids, no mortgage, stuff like that. So we were able to take a little more risk than maybe some of the other partners. We were paying ourselves less than our developers, much less. And we were trying to hoard all the cash we could just in case shit went bad. don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this, but anyways, so keep that in mind too. We always had at least 4 to 5 months of cash on hand through the whole process. So.
Got it. Okay. So, I mean, it makes sense. Like if someone joins a service-based business, right, and they like the service-based business because there's always new and novel problems and interesting things to solve, right? It's hard to transition out of like, every day it's a new problem, right? To no, it's the same product and it's maybe minor tweaks or we're answering the same question over and over.
Not everyone wanted to do it.
Yeah, it's a different problem, but the cadence of that I think is significantly easier, right? Like, for I don't know if this was your experience in the service, it's kind of a blitz every day, right? Like, you're solving so many problems. There's so many new things that are popping up, and a product is like it's not like no, it's this week's sprint or this week's certain deliverables or whatever it is, but it's more regular compared to like the high pressure cooker of services or consulting kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. It was a different pace and just a different mindset too. I mean, this is a warning, I guess, to partners that want to do this. And I know there are some trying. I actually had one from the UK email me this week and said, "Hey, can we chat? We're trying." But I was very bad at this. Coming from the service background, and I'm just naturally, I want to help people, which a lot of people in service do. I like solving problems. I'm not a developer, but in the Zoho suite, you don't really have to be to solve a lot of the problems. And then you have people like Andrew or whatever. So where I'm going with that is that mindset had to shift where someone calls now that's on our mortgage product. And we've got right now, we've actually got a new product as well. So between those two products, we have about 1,700 clients now. And it's like someone calls and they say, "Hey, I want this custom thing set up." And typically you'd be like, "Great, time and materials, let's do it." Now with the product, we actually have a process where it's like, okay, have other people asked for this? If so, okay, upvote it. Okay, we're going to build it in the next sprint. You have to say no a lot more. And that was something that I struggled with the most. My business partner's much better at it. But the other piece is like, we're still struggling with it. We still have service clients that still want stuff. Like we didn't kill all our relationships with them. We told them we're shifting and we said, if you reach out, we can help you through support. But if you need custom stuff, we're going to outsource you. And sometimes they'll email me and be like, "Mass, like we worked together 6 years ago. Could you do this little thing?" And sometimes I still do, which I shouldn't. So but in general, that mindset has to change. You got to start saying no a lot more. And that's just the reality of a product. Yeah.
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned this. There's a really good case study of a video game called No Man's Sky.
Yeah,
right?
I played it.
Yeah. So when it first launched,
Hello Games, it was shit.
Yeah, it was terrible.
I asked for a refund. Yeah, but
exactly.
I didn't get one. Yeah.
But a bunch of people emailed in and said like, "Hey, this is a problem, like, blah, blah, blah." And they'll describe like, "You said this and I was really wanting this." Right. And the CEO, like he read all those emails. He categorized all the emails into like just general complaining, media, and then like actual customers that were talking about something specific. And then he grabbed those emails and triaged the most demand, like, starting with the thing people asked for the most. And then he just started adding it to the game. And after, I don't know how many years it's been, 8 years.
It's amazing now.
Yeah. It's amazing now. And everyone loves it. But it's difficult, from a service background to do that. Like, hey, wait for the volume of requests about a feature to actually add it in, because we can't just add features every time someone requests it. Right. Yeah. It is a notable mindset difference.
Definitely. Yeah. It was challenging, especially for me. But you can't build a product unless you have it. Like otherwise you're going to have this flaky thing that's adding features all the time. And we probably won't get into it on this podcast, but if anyone wants to reach out and know all the inner workings of Zoho's vertical or copy customize, we've been through it there and we know all the tips and tricks. But there's some functional reasons why you can't always say yes is what I'm getting at. So, yeah.
So in terms of hiring, right, like what's the difference between hiring for a service or consulting business versus hiring for a product-based business? Like what, is what you're looking for different? Is the process different? Like
Yeah, I would say so. Probably like the hiring criteria is definitely different. Like, so when I think of our service business, when we were hiring for it, we were really testing a lot on problem solving ability. So we do we do a couple things in our interview process now. We make them film a loom about themselves. We make them fill out a survey, and then we'll do a case. And we would go even deeper on the service side. So I guess my point there is problem solving was very important because really on a lot of the calls, you're going to have to do that kind of on the fly. And even if you don't know what the heck you're talking about, you got to at least guide the client in the right direction. On the product side, it has shifted, although we still want that. I would say it's less of a focus. There are what is more of a focus is kind of attention to detail, and also the we focus a lot more on let's put it this way. We can now with MRR and things like that, and for those that don't know, that's monthly recurring revenue. So with that, we now sit as a team and we all talk about it every Friday. How did our MRR go up? How did our churn go up? How do we reduce that? It's a lot more target-driven people that are very closely linked to the growth of the business, and we compensate them that way. So what we test for is people that want to push new sales or strategies to increase growth or strategies to decrease churn. That's the first thing. I maybe should have prepped for that question a little more, but the problem solving versus the growth mindset, I would say, is how we've shifted our focus. Not that service isn't growth minded, but I would say the product, it's a lot easier to see the growth, and it's a lot easier to implement things when you're implementing it for 1,800 people. Like right now, we're talking about bringing out like a Amazon Prime style for our product and throw all kinds of things in there to get upsells. And that's kind of, then we're going to tell the team to push it, right? So anyways, that's the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know if there's, because you've been doing a lot of these with people, if there's other things I should tackle there in that question.
Well, yeah, maybe. From what I'm hearing, service-based, you look for the ability to problem solve versus product-based. It sounds like this is the ability to test certain like tweaks for growth. Right, because it is more consistent. Like, hey, if we change this particular email to include this stuff or eliminate this phrase or whatever, like I think we'll get a bump here. That's much harder on the server side of things because so much of it is custom, right? And it's like a new problem that needs to be solved versus people who understand this is what we're doing now. How do we improve it more often, kind of thing.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, the reason for that is a lot of the stuff we have in the business now is automated, or not automated, but templated. There's a process. There's a blueprint on how we answer tickets, and we categorize them in a certain way. There's a process, a macro and blueprints on setting up all of our copy customized accounts. And so it's a lot of like tweaking the engine. And so we still need curious people and we still need smart people, but there's much stricter boundaries that people operate in to make the engine go. And so then where they get their creativity is on the growth side of the business. So yeah, that's probably the best way I can handle it. But we also, one thing we learned through this whole process, we're a unique company. I don't know what all the other partners are doing. We are hybrid, so we go in a couple days a week, typically 2, depending on the team. The devs go in 1, CS and others go in 2. Just our culture, we revamped our values. We made it very clear to everyone what our values are. And that's a big criteria that we hire for now on the product side. I don't know if that's a difference between service or not, but we didn't really care as much about it on the service side. We just said, like, can you problem solve? Okay, great. Now it's like, do you agree with these values that we have, including the hybrid work and FaceTime? So that's something we learned where we had people that were great individual contributors, but were shit on the culture side. And so we now really look at that much more highly. And I don't even know if some partners have values. We didn't for the first 7 years, honestly. And then about 3 years ago, we made them and we've tweaked them every year.
It's interesting because on server side, like the not having, a defined culture, right? Yeah. Always leads to a culture of problem solving, right? Which
true.
And ends up leading to everyone looking for problems to solve, right? And then that kind of has this Ouroboros effect where look for a problem to solve and then solve that problem and look for a problem, right? Yeah. Versus when you go to a product, right, you really need to define that culture so that one, you don't get into this constant problem solving to prevent, every request for a feature get added into the system, right? It's got to be a lot more defined.
Yeah.
When you hired, like, your first, let's say, external hire after the change from services to product, what advice would you give to someone if they were looking to hire someone, if they were going into the products, making his own product? What advice on the hiring side of things would you give to someone getting into that space?
Yeah. So, I mean, sorry. Okay. Yeah. A couple things. So first off, it's hard to let go, especially if you're a founder or you started the business, whatever you want to call yourself. I've struggled with that. So first off, you have to trust the person you're hiring completely. One of the things we now do before we make a new hire, typically, at least an important new hire, and I wish I would have done this for the first hire, is write down all the tasks you do in a day and determine what could be given to someone else. And if you have enough that can be given to someone else, not outsourced, but you could outsource. A lot of partners do. But if you have enough that you think someone else could provide value and it could get you out of the everyday in the business and working on the business, that's a line we always have. I think it's from the E-Myth or something, some book. That's what I would focus on, and that's when I would pull the trigger. Now, when you pull the trigger and hire someone, first off, especially that first hire, when we did that one, we really focused on what is your 5-year plan here? Do you want to grow with the business? Do you want to move up? And when you're hiring, you always got to keep it. This is something I've learned. I often say, the business is growing or we're churning and whatever. And employees don't really give a shit about that. They really want to, unless you're giving them equity or whatever, but what they care about is how is this going to help their career? And so really focus, okay, what is your career aspirations? Where do you want to be? Do you want to take ownership of things? Then what we do is, or we now do, and we did a little bit at the time, is we immediately say, okay, this is your 3-month journey. You have goals and targets to hit in the 3 months. We have one-on-ones every week with people, and we have quarterly reviews. So we set expectations, but then it's just give them stuff. Stop being a pusher to them. Stop saying, here, do this, do that, do this. Just say, here are the things you got to do it. Give them guardrails on when they have to get it to you. And if they have questions, you have certain times in the day you can help them. But you would be surprised how, and I'm sure you've dealt with this, Andrew, you have a lot of staff, people want to do well, obviously, and they want autonomy. Now, I'm famous for giving a ton of autonomy. I just kind of say, go do it. And that has backfired because then I don't give guardrails and tests if they do it right. But anyways, does that answer the question?
Yeah,
give you some
that makes a lot of sense. Our area of the Zoho ecosystem, certain roles often require much more guide rails. Just given the personality type, developers, think a certain way, act a certain way, they need more guardrails, right? An account manager or a designer or something, they need less guardrails in place. But yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Massimo, thank you for hopping on the show today. I appreciate it. If you want to get a hold of Massimo, you can go to his website. It's bluroot.ca, BLUROOT. There's no E in the blue. Again, Massimo, thank you for jumping on today.